Hi, everybody. Welcome to Show Me 50 Lean In Circle meeting in January. We're covering 2022, the year you master your feedback loop, maximizing feedback for career growth. And we have special guests, Chris Chapman and Crystal Wooden. So let's go ahead and get started. Just real quick, Show Me 50 is a nonprofit organization, and we work to give people like you the motivation to act and the ability to do it by arming you with facts and information to help level the playing field at work and create a more balanced leadership talent system at your companies. We work closely with Lean In. We're a Lean In partner, and we combine both the educational skills from Lean In with influencing skills from Show Me 50. I also want to give a shout out to our 3 brand new circles in the Lean In network. We have the Dallas Japanese Career Women, Place for Practice out of Beaumont, Texas, and Core Women right here in Atlanta, Georgia. So welcome to those circles. And we're actually going to be having what we call a Lean In Circle factory coming up in February, where we're going to have our 3 new circles join, tell us about their circles, and tell us about how we can maybe start your own circle or join theirs for more career development. So I'm going to kick it off. Before I turn it over to Chris and Crystal, they're both going to share with us sort of their top ways that they successfully have navigated providing feedback between boss and employee. But I want to set the playing field here by sharing with you a couple of important learnings. And I mentioned at the beginning that Show Me 50 really focuses on giving you the tools. I think one reason that women aren't in as many leadership level positions is because we don't get enough feedback. In fact, we don't get the right kind of feedback. And there's going to be 2 articles that I am going to put into the chat that you can download. Their PDF files. They're both from Harvard Business Review. And actually there's one more that's from Indeed.com. And on this slide, you can see that really, when you look at 4 areas of feedback: vision, political skills, asserting leadership, and confidence, that men get one set of instructions or feedback and women get a different set. And so I'm just going to read a couple of points from this article that, in this first article that I'll publish, they looked at 1,000 pieces of written feedback between men and women. And they identified that development feedback for female employees tends to be focused on delivering versus visioning, right? And when we think of leaders, you think of, vision. They teach women to cope with politics rather than leverage politics. And they tell women that they need to collaborate rather than be assertive. And of course, we know that assertive is what people expect leaders to be. Another couple of things from this article is they give, what I like about it is they give specific ways that you can ask your boss for feedback. So here's some examples. If you want to get feedback on vision, what you can ask your boss is, hey, what is your vision for the team? And how do I fit in creating the vision for the team? On political skills, you can ask things like, hey, how do you feel about politics, boss? What are constructive ways that I can engage in politics? When you talk about assertive leadership, you want to talk about your aspirations with your boss. Ask them specifically, hey, in a year's time, what are the steps that I need to take to achieve a leadership role? So again, I'll post the article in the chat, but I think it's important for you to understand that men and women are getting different types of feedback. And we need to, flip the script and make sure that women are getting the same type of feedback so that we can be seen as leaders. Another article that I'm going to post in the chat is why women need to ask for better feedback and more often. And so in this one, you'll see that they give you kind of 3 big tips. When it comes to timing, it takes a thoughtful environment with your boss. Don't just do it on the fly. right? Use one-on-one meetings. And I liked this suggestion, which is when there's inflection points in your career or in your workload or your work assignments, that might be a good place. Like if you just finished a big project or you just got assigned a big project, that might be a good time to ask for feedback. Sources, this is another great one. Think about who you're getting your feedback from. Just don't get it from your boss. Can you talk to peers? Can you talk to your boss's boss? Where else can you go for real constructive feedback? And lastly, lead the conversation. Ask leading questions such as, hey, what are the things I do well? Or what are my strengths within the organization's goals? Let's see, we have Kelly Gonter had a comment here. She suggests starting the conversation with your planned approach on leveraging politics, claiming your space, and then opening to your boss for discussion on the pros and cons of what your planned approach is. I love that, Kelly. Okay, so I'm going to now turn it over to Chris and Crystal. So I am going to turn off my share here. Stop sharing and just let you all take the stage. So I'm going to introduce you real quick. So Chris is coming, actually both Chris and Crystal are coming from an organization called Porex Filtration Group. And Chris has been with Porex, looks like almost about a couple of years. Before that, he was a senior materials manager. Before that, he was at Kimberly-Clark. And then Crystal has over 15 years of supply chain experience, mostly focusing on manufacturing and distribution. And she's currently a purchasing manager at Porex Filtration Group. So I thought that was what was really neat about this is that both Chris and Crystal agreed to chat with us about their experience on feedback, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how do they make it successful. So with that, I just want to turn it over to you guys. You have the floor and take it away.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Crystal, did you want to go first? Or
you got it. Thank you.
So, okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Chapman. I'm the plant manager for Porex here in Fairburn, Georgia. And I really just want to go through what I value about feedback. Feedback is critically important to me. It's a gift, and I know that you've heard that. But it needs to be practiced. It's not easy. The positive feedback, providing that positive feedback is, and it's, receiving the positive feedback is easy, but when opportunities come up where improvements are needed, that's not so easy. And that's where it can become awkward, and we tend to shy away from those discussions, because we're not sure how the other person is going to respond, or we may know how they're going to react. And that just, puts us at a distance. So what I've learned too is that we're also conditioned to minimize how we may feel about something or explain away someone's performance or behavior because we don't want to confront them with it. But again, that's not fair to that person or to you if you're feeling some way about it. As uncomfortable as it may be, don't shy away from it. Focus solely on, don't shy away and don't focus solely on the negative. Let the person know what they're doing well, kind of what Elba had mentioned, and where you'd like to see something different. We receive feedback all day, every day. We receive it from our friends, our family, significant others, co-workers, managers, store attendants, service providers, you name it, we receive it. And as we're receiving that feedback, we're filtering out what we believe to be true, because we don't necessarily want to believe that someone thinks that we aren't doing great, right? We're not doing everything right. But when we start filtering the feedback, we're overlooking, glaring character flaws that we should reflect on. And in order to change, we must not just hear what the person's saying. We truly have to listen to what's being said and ask ourselves, is that a belief that I want that person to have about me? In some cases, it might be a belief that I'm not really interested in changing, but in others, and many times I find that I don't want someone to see me as in a negative light, right? And then, that leads into the 101s, and I leave that up to my direct reports, as that's their time. I try not to impart any objectives on them, any business objectives, any personal objectives. That's their time to talk about what they want to. And sometimes I can't avoid that because there are performance concerns, and we have to have those open and candid conversations. But I leave it up to the individual to tell me, to talk to me, and they want to talk about their family, work, whatever they want to discuss. It's their time, and that helps build that trust and relationships. Um, Something else that I try to minimize are the distractions. And I actually, in my office, I have a separate table and chairs, and I have my computer on my desk. And when I'm in those 101s, I leave my computer there and my phone there, so it helps to keep those distractions away, and I can focus on what the individual's talking about. Sometimes I shake it up and take the person out to lunch, or hey, let's go for a walk. It's a nice day outside, and have those discussions. So those are some of the tips that I follow. Crystal,
Sure.
you have anything to add there?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. So in my collaboration over the 15 years of supply chain and both developing employees and working alongside them, I use my one-on-one as team building or even relevance to the person or the business. I try to leverage to a point where it's not at a negative focal point. I also try to do my one-on-one or reviews on Friday. That way, if there is a behavior issue we need to speak on, the person is not elaborating over throughout the week and having that negative impact. They can actually go home over the weekend, think about how to do better. And then as we reconvene for our purchasing meeting that I have with my entire team on Tuesday, the person has time to elaborate on what we spoke about, what those next steps are. Then I also do quarterly lunches with my team where we just take a break apart from the noise or the busy days, just to have general conversations about family. Also try to incorporate fun times outside of COVID where we may do escape room or bowling or something to have that collaboration. Because of course at work, your work team, you're going to spend more time with most time than your family. So you definitely want to build that trust. I do show my team that I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. So therefore they trust me, they trust the feedback I give, and also they trust that I have their best interest. So building that trust with your team definitely would help them go over and beyond for the greater goal of the team. And as I set those goals for our team, we have a two-way conversation. What do you need from me, and what do I need from you? So it's not all about all the time, what do I need from you? And if we do have negative instances, where they're underperforming, I incorporate that into a positive point where, okay, like this is where we need to be. This is how we want the business to perceive our department. So I try to not make it individualized as much as possible, just so it will help a person take the constructive criticism, so to speak. And for myself, I'm very big on accountability for myself. So I do own if things are too busy and I can't support my team, I do own that. And then I do then try to recuperate how that we can connect to make sure they're getting everything they need from me from a training standpoint and from the expectations of the business.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
spot on. And depending on where someone is at on their development journey as well, depends on the frequency of the 101s. For some, if someone's new to role or new to the organization, I typically have weekly 101s with that individual. As I get to know the person, I may leave it up to them to how frequent those 101s or those interactions should be. Some people like to have that connection, and others are like, just let me go do my thing. And I use situational leadership a lot to help with that determination on where they're at, whether they're in the development phase or the supporting. And I'll get a little bit further into that. But one of the things I like to do is balance candor with curiosity. And I learned that from the book Conversational Capacity from Craig Weber. It's probably one of the best books that I've ever read. And I try to pawn it off on everyone that'll listen to me, because it's a great read that helps you understand why someone is saying or doing something, instead of letting my emotions get in the way of that. And I'm human, right? People have said things to me and I've got, I've become upset or angry. But since I've read that book, I try to be more self-aware of that. And, whether I've been on both ends of it, right? I've been the one that's going to my boss, and I become frustrated, angry, hurt, happy, sad, all gamuts of emotions. And I've learned that being able to balance where that person's coming from and why helps me to be able to respond in a more positive manner as well.
I want to share something that you guys touched on. You touched on earlier about building trust. And also, I love what you said, curiosity, and then situational leadership, Chris. I'm going to share my screen and show you guys, one thing about Show Me 50 is I like to give you practical things that you can actually use, okay? So taking into account what I read from the Harvard business articles that I posted for you, that's documents 1 and 2. I came up with this, and this is a real life situation. This is actually me. And the reason I brought it up because you guys talked about trust, Crystal and Chris. So what you're looking at here, can everybody see my screen? It's an Excel file.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of times, especially women, and this is not me saying it, this is like in all of the research, just don't get specific constructive feedback. So what I did this year, welcome Joan, we just had a new person join. I sat down, like the article said, one-on-one with my boss. In advance, I let him know we were going to do this exercise, so he knew that what was coming. It wasn't a shock to him. And so we had a real honest conversation. What are the skills? So look at the top row. I made this spreadsheet. The top row are these 4 things, and we made this grid together. This first one, what are the leadership skills that the candidate, in this case, let's say it's me, is missing to do my boss's job? So you could fill this in for yourself, right? If you want your boss's job. The next one is, okay, what are the actions that candidate needs to demonstrate that they're closing the skill gap? Number 3, what are the actions that the boss is going to take, right? Crystal, this goes to what you just said, that you ask your employees, what can I do to help you, right? To support you. So what are the actions the boss is going to take to support the candidate to develop that skill gap that you guys just identified right here? And then the last one is, how is the boss going to judge that you actually closed the gap? So this goes to accountability, Crystal. I think you brought up accountability, right? So we define the skills that are needed. That's this first yellow box. Then we say, okay, the green box, what are the actions that the person needs to close? Then the next box is, okay, well, what is the boss going to do to support the candidate? And then lastly, and this one's the accountability, super important. How is the boss going to make sure that I've closed the gap? We agree up front, right? Because then later when I prove it, I'm like, wait, but you said if I did this, that you would believe it. And then what we did was, we just identified 3 things, right? So these were them. Trust from a specific group of people is what I have to get. The next one is I have to leverage multifunctional support to work with others and show the leadership skills. And then the last one is take a stronger leadership persona by getting exposure in front of these big people. So now I have a plan, right? We have these 3 specific things. And then my boss said, this is how we're going to demonstrate that you did it. This is how I'm going to help you do each one. And lastly, this is how I will judge whether you did it or not. So let's look at this one. This is a good one. The way he's going to judge if I have trust from these people is that for this year, I'm not going to have any blowups lately, right? Because sometimes when there's misunderstandings, well, things kind of fall off the rails, right? Go sideways, as we sometimes hear. But in this case, hey, if there are no going sideways, then that'll be proof that I've mastered the trust. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because I want to just tell you that you can create tools to force you to have these conversations like Chris and Crystal are talking about, right? And that helps all the parties have clarity about what's been agreed to. So what else, Chris and Crystal?
So for me, when looking at developing my team prior to POREX, we would do a 30, 60, 90-day plan, which was at 30 days, we should be here, 60 days there, 90 days, okay, have you exceeded those expectations? So that comes considerably with a great line of sight for the department and actual KPIs that we're trying to meet. So that is, again, with adding my new team member that started a couple weeks ago. We're going to re-implement it, just not on a personnel point of view, but as a team of where we should be 30, 60, 90 days from now with the changes in the department and the new expectations.
And Crystal, that 30, 60, 90 days, the reason I love those kinds of things is because it forces you to define clearly what it is you're going to do, and then have that cadence of repeated engagement with your boss, that's what develops the trust, right? Crystal was talking about how she takes her team sometimes offsite or just build that camaraderie. And that's what you need. So if you're man or woman at work and you're not having engagements, physical, face-to-face or on Zoom, on a regular cadence with the people who make decisions about your career, then you have less of a chance of being promoted. You've got to build that trust.
And one of the things that I strongly recommend for my team and for myself is when I am going into a one-on-one and I do have a problem that I'm looking for advice on, I go in there with what the problem is, and then also with what I think should be the solution, whether it's right, wrong, or different, but to spitball that with my manager to set the expectations, and then also get feedback that, okay, I'm on the mark or I'm way off the mark, right? With how I think it should be solved. A lot of times people will bring their problems forward and they just dump it in the manager's lap. And it's like, okay, I can help you solve that, but that's when I start, that curiosity, right? Well, what are you thinking, and trying to pull that out of the person to help them solve the problem themselves versus me giving them the answer. And it builds confidence. And talking about that situational leadership, which Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard did a great job defining that, but it helps build them up from being more of a directive leadership style and on my part to a coaching and supporting, and then ultimately delegating.
Let's pause for a minute. I'd love to get some of the audience participation. If the attendees have any stories on feedback, do you have like a good experience or a bad experience that we can all learn from? I'd love to hear about on comments. We have one from Kelly just commented here that nobody cares more about your career than you do, right? We have to make sure that your boss has all the info that they need to support you, and that you have you provide your accomplishments, which reminds me, at Show Me 50, we do a workshop called #IamRemarkable from Google, which teaches women and underrepresented groups how to speak up for your accomplishments, because it's not bragging if it's based on facts, right? But sometimes we're embarrassed to talk about our achievements. But if you don't talk about your achievements to your boss, how are they going to know? You just saw in my Excel spreadsheet that one of the ways the boss is going to know I achieved something is if I demonstrate these. Well, I have to, we agreed that I'm going to start sending him emails and just say, hey, this just happened, and I want you to be aware that this is something that built trust or collaborated, et cetera.
That's something I struggle with, though.
Oh, to talk about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I struggle because I feel like I'm grandstanding, or I truly have a hard time doing that.
I know. I love Karen said here, evidence-based, right? We're so into science and data, but when it comes to ourselves, we seem to forget, right? But it's true, Chris. Sometimes we get penalized, right? Some people might think, oh, he's grandstanding, or she's grandstanding, or she's bragging.
Yes.
But I turn it around on you all. Think about LinkedIn. Does anybody on this call use LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yes, right? Do you see that on LinkedIn, people do talk about their accomplishments? People post their certificates that they've earned. They might post that they just got a promotion. They post that they completed some big job. But I want to encourage you to do that with your boss. Especially with their boss. You have to speak about your accomplishments. It just takes practice and trying to get rid of that fear. Let me see if there's any other questions. Does anybody have a story you want to share on feedback from our attendees? Want to raise your hand or just speak up? Okay, we'll just keep going. So Crystal and Chris, give us some more juice. This is good stuff.
I'm sorry, Elba, this is Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, so I couldn't find the hand thing fast enough, but so I'll just jump in with one little story. So in my past job, my job previous to this, I had a boss that was stationed in Chicago. And so, and I am a longtime employee. I hate to be micromanaged, but at the same time, if I needed a way, I wanted her to give me the goal and then I would achieve the goal. But at the same time, if she just never had any visibility to what I was doing, then how could she support me and promote me, to people that, needed to know about my, what I'm bringing to the organization. So, so that was one thing that I just, I keep going back to. I had to find ways to give her the information that she needed in a way that was easy and quick, and didn't add a lot of work to her, so that then she could make things happen for me from her side and provide the support that she needed, the ammunition that she needed to provide me the support that I wanted. And so, and sure enough, by providing that in bite-sized pieces, in easy to digest pieces, easy to share pieces, I came to this new assignment, which I absolutely love. And so it really works to, to provide those accomplishments in a way that supports your boss so that they can support you.
Absolutely. And in fact, going back to that one of the first article I posted, which by the way, I'll be sharing these articles on the Show Me 50 website for this event. But when you talk about giving your boss the information they need that aligns to the business, right? That is what's super critical. I was trying to find in here, where it said that one of the main things that we have to do is to show our boss how what we're doing aligns directly to the business goals, because that enables them to see that you think strategically and that you have this visioning potential. Okay, what else? Anybody else have a comment?
Well, one of the things also, when you don't have to just wait for those one-on-ones. I strongly encourage that if, like this, for instance, Elba, I may ask you afterwards, what feedback do you have for me on the presentation and things like that. I'm going to ask you what feedback do you have, because that's a question where you have to come back. It's not just a yes or no question. Because I could come in and say, do you have any feedback for me? And you could just say no and then move on. So it's about how you frame up the questions to be able to get that constructive feedback, the positive and the opportunities.
That's right. And when you do ask for the feedback, it is easier for the boss to be vague, right? Maybe they're afraid of how you might take the feedback, or they just don't know how to frame it. So to Kelly's point, we can help our bosses by starting it off, right? You might say, for example, what strengths did I show during this presentation? Or in what ways did I, demonstrate communication? Or what ways could I have communicated differently? And that way you've opened the door for them to say, okay, communications, and how could they have done it differently? Well, now I feel more comfortable that you've opened the door to accept my feedback. So we can help our bosses by being very specific and not just saying, hey, how did I do? Right? Another way you could say, how did I do in relation to delivering in alignment with our business goals? Then they might say, oh, actually, our business goal is A, and you were over here talking about C, right? So let's figure out, how do we connect you from A to C?
And an annual or a biannual performance review should never be a shock to someone. Should never. If you're having these interactions.
Yep. And what should we do? Back to Kelly saying that it's kind of like no one knows our career plans better than us, right? If you have a review and it's a shock that you got something, I think that should be a flag for us to say, okay, I messed up, because it shouldn't be a shock for me. And I can't just let my boss control my career. I probably should have been talking to them more. So let's say I don't have a good boss like Crystal, who's taking us out on events and building rapport and trust. Well, maybe that needs to fall to me, right? Maybe I need to put on my boss's calendar. I coach and mentor some young mentees this way. I say, look, if your boss doesn't talk to you, schedule time in their calendar. Like, don't even ask them, just send them an Outlook invitation for 30 minutes just to talk about something, right? And use that as an opportunity.
Elba, I have something that I'd like to share with everybody, and that's, there's so many different things that go into communication and listening, learning, and advancing in your career. And it's, there's so many personality types. There's a great tools out there, personality types. There's a disc. There's a different colors. I mean, there's so many things out there. There's also books like Strengths Finder, which tell you what your top strengths are, which I really recommend to everybody. And also, we operate from our own modality, meaning there are 5 senses that we work from. Are we auditory? Are we kinesiology, which is feeling? Are we visual, which is seeing? And then there's gustatory and olfactory. I mean, I remember doing a proposal for a company, and they came back, and it was having to do with it was a top chef for a very expensive, well-known restaurant in California. And they came back and said, wow, your proposal was delicious. I've never heard of anybody saying a proposal being delicious. But it's important for us to pay attention to the words that people use and how they share. Just because somebody's quiet and they don't want to have, meetings in front of everybody doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care about you. It may mean that they're just very shy, they're an introvert, and they're very auditory, and they don't really want to, pontificate in front of everybody there. So it's, going back to what Chris said, curiosity is such a great tool. I mean, if we can learn what our own modalities are, I tend to be very visual, and I've learned I need to find out from people by asking questions. What's most important to you? If I come back to you, my boss, and say, okay, you want me to present this to you, what's most important? Do you want me to present it in a PowerPoint? Do you want me to give handouts? Or is it something that you want me to just talk about? Or is it something that you want people to walk away with an amazing feeling? Or how do you want everybody feeling when we're done with the presentation? It just gives you a lot more information and tools to be able to then go back and then go with the evidence, say, hey, this is what I was able to do for our division, our department, our company. When is our next move? And, looking at promotions and all that kind of stuff. So again, evidence-based information. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank
Hey, Karen,
you.
I like your sign back there. There are no failures, only outcomes. So that's awesome.
Yeah, to me, failure is just feedback. If you just reframe failure to feedback, because if you're not getting the results you want, adjust. The insanity of doing things over and over again is insanity, right? So it's like, if we're not getting the results we want, pivot, do something different. Contact, somebody, Alba, or anybody else that within your company, and show me 50 and tying to your resources. Because if you're not getting the outcome you want, flexibility in addition to curiosity is a huge component to being successful at any job that you do.
Yeah, a couple of good points. One is what you just said about, contact somebody else. It reminds me on the slide I showed earlier, right? Your sources. Think about the sources where you're getting your feedback. Maybe there's another source to help you. Also, Karen, you were saying things like how and what, and that I'm going to read a few questions, because a lot of times we ask for feedback, but it forces the person to be vague. If you used your starting words a little differently, it forces them to give you information. And here, I'm going to read you some examples. So one question might be, how does this fit in with the bigger picture, right? Notice it starts with the word how. How can I involve others in developing the visioning skills? What areas of expertise do I need to develop? Right? Notice how specific it is. What areas of expertise? Well, then the person can't just say, oh, he can't be, or she can't be vague, because you said what areas of expertise, right? Here's one that I really like. Where was it? Oh, discussion about politics. It'd be great for you and your boss to have a discussion about politics, because to be a higher leader, you have to be able to manage politics. And so to enter into a trusting conversation, you could say, hey, how do you feel about workplace politics? What might be constructive ways of engaging politics in my role? Do you see how we start with how and what? Those kinds of questions are what leads to actual good information. Yeah, what are your leadership aspirations? Right? It's like very specific. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, go ahead,
And
Chris.
we also have to be receptive to feedback, whether we ask for it or not, right? So if there's something that I'm doing that is bothering someone, I want to hear about that, right? I want to know, what is it that I'm doing that's annoying you, that is making you not want to interact with me because of that, right? And take that feedback and understand it and be able to make or adjust, be flexible, as Karen had said.
Yeah. So right now, I think most companies are going through a annual performance review. Are you all doing the same thing? Like, many companies wrap up the end of the year, and then in January, you start doing your performance reviews. Has anyone already had a performance review for 2022? I'm curious. Can people raise their hands if you have had a review? I'm interested to know if it's already happened. I have not yet. Anybody?
We're working through the process. We haven't delivered them yet.
Yep. So we're probably all working through the process. So right now, it's your moment. It's your moment to say that in this year, I'm going to, kind of take command of my performance. So whether you use that Excel spreadsheet or whether you use some other tool, I would highly encourage you to take a look at both those Harvard review articles I posted, because they've got some excellent points that you ought to just get up the courage this year right now to make a change in your life. And if you haven't been getting the kind of feedback that you want, there's no one to blame but yourself after this call, because you need to go do it, right? So maybe Crystal and Chris, can you give us some kind of last closing tips, thinking of this year right now that people are going into their boss reviews? Is there anything you can, kind of throw out? Crystal, why don't you go first?
Sure. So for me, and the feedback for my team, even for my new employee, is, what are our goals going into 2022? And with supply chain being so volatile as it is, we find ourselves in a whirlwind. So how to manage outside of the whirlwind to still make your team feel like they are being supported and they're not just, pushed aside as we continue to deal with the whirlwind, because then it's hard to focus on the departmental goals. So as I review that, I review myself. Am I taking a logical amount of time to make sure my team have what they need? Are they getting the support that they need? So not only am I evaluating them on how they feel about themselves, but also the support I feel that I play in the role of them being developed.
Got it. Thank you, Crystal. And Chris, what about you? Any closing kind of tips or ideas for people?
So to Crystal's point, I'll be focused more on 2022, because having the conversation about 2021, that's the process, and we're already past that. And I hope that my team isn't surprised by the information or the ratings that come out, and then we can just focus on moving forward and what development they need to be able to, if they're lagging behind, to get up to that meets or exceeds and go from there. So looking forward versus in the past.
Super. And then kind of as we wrap it up, as we look at, I'm looking at the folks here in the room. Anybody else have any sort of closing remarks or best practices, suggestions as we enter we're basically closing out the rear view mirror, but we're also setting our goals for the next year, right? So again, after today's call, look at 22 and say, hey, okay, this is a fresh year. Let's make my goals real clear for my boss and specifically ask them, how are you going to help me, right? It's a two-way street, but they have to help you and then you have to be accountable to it. Anyone?
And I want to say for me, Elba, got that rating from my employee. The trust that we have built over the months I've been at Porex, around about 5, she could honestly and open rate herself and know that I agree with it because of the weekly meetings we have, because of the communication line that we have open, of the honest feedback, but not as a beat down feedback, but as a learning opportunity.
Growth, right? To help us all grow. I want to comment, Nada, I hope I'm saying your name right, made a great comment. She says, make full use of your career development system if you have one. I just got off a call this morning with a mentor of mine, and he reminded our small group that exactly that point, right? That as technology, and we talked earlier about data, you know, and letting the data speak for itself. Well, if companies are going to now start using these HR systems more frequently for data pulling, and you have not updated your talent management system to be clear about what your aspirations are, what your accomplishments are, well, then you're missing out if the company starts using those systems to make their decisions on career advancement. So make sure you go look at your profile. Is it accurate? Have you articulated what you want to achieve? Okay, well, listen, it's I've got 12:44, and let's see, we have one more message here. Rose Walker, thank you. She says it's such a good reminder. She keeps meaning to do this and hasn't, right? So that's it. Today, all of you get off your off this call and go put flashes on your talent management system and get it up to spiffy so it can reflect the true capabilities that you have. So listen, thanks everybody. Again, we'll be posting all these documents. I really want to thank Chris and Crystal for being on the hot seat. You know, that's part of development too. So I'm so happy that you demonstrate to others that you can talk about feedback. So everybody have a great day. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you. See
Bye.
ya. Bye.
Bye.